So the second game is the LA Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks -3.5 with the hook, of course. This game started really strange in terms of the spread, in terms of the line. It started off as like a -4 or something, a -4, -4.5, and I even saw it at 5 early on. It's moved all the way down to 3.5 and maybe even 3 in some places. So that's quite interesting. But it's now 3.5 as far as I know. And it's kind of unfortunate because I wasn't able to bet the game early, or I decided not to bet the game early. I had a chance to, but I didn't. I was going to take the Rams, so that kind of lets you know where I'm leaning here. But I was going to take the Rams +5. But I was like, 5 is such a weird number. Like, I'll wait on it. Hopefully it goes up to 6, but I called it wrong. So it went the wrong way. So it went to 3.5. So I guess everyone else was thinking the way I was thinking, but that's just the way it is. Overall, interesting matchup. I feel like it's going to be a defensive game based on the statistics we see here. Two defenses. The Rams defense overall, one of the best in the game. I know they rank second according to DVOA, only behind the Steelers. And for me, I think they're the best in the league. I think the Rams defense is going to have a nice game plan, as they have the first 2 games they've played the Seahawks, and keep Russell Wilson kind of in check. I feel like they're going to come out and play him tough. Now, on the flip side, Seahawks defense played a lot better in the second matchup than they did in the first. They've overall improved a lot more. Really, they were terrible at the beginning of the year. I remember people were saying, like, are they the worst defense of all time? Well, that's not the case. They've definitely gotten a lot better. In fact, they're in the top 15, according to DVOA, in the NFL at the end of the season. Now, offensively, the Rams aren't great on offense. A lot of that has to do with Jared Goff and the overall quarterback play. But Sean McVay's there. Robert Woods is there. It appears Cooper Kupp will be back. So that's big for them. And offensively for Seattle, I feel like they have slipped. I think the Rams have kind of been steady average all year long, maybe a little bit above average on offense all year long, and that's about as good as they've been. Seattle, meanwhile, was like maybe the best offense in the league, and they've slipped towards being like good, but not like quite as iconic as they were early on with let Russ cook, right? I'm not really sure who's going to be the quarterback for the Rams. Obviously, that's the other side of the ball. I feel like if it's Wolford, it really doesn't change much. I just saw a report that Jared Goff is back at practice and that he might be in line to start this weekend. But honestly, like, I don't think it really changes the game a ton. Jared Goff is the better passer. I think obviously he has a better arm. Arm strength is much better, and he can probably attack the Seahawks secondary down the field more. But in terms of Wolford, like, he gives a dimension of kind of agility, overall speed, mobility that Jared Goff doesn't have. And we saw in the first matchup, which might as well just get into it now, like, the Seahawks really were not afraid of their ability to boot and then the quarterback's ability to run. Like, Jared Goff was just kind of sitting back there, and he had all this lane to run ahead of him. And Seattle just said, pal, go ahead. Like, they're just like rolling out the red carpet for him. And it just, like, he never runs. Like, I think teams have figured out that he doesn't have the ability to run, and he also doesn't really have, like, the gumption to run. Like, he doesn't have the balls to do it. So, like, Jared Goff can make plays with his arm. If he's on, he's on. He can be a good quarterback in this system. But I think the biggest difference between the two is Wolford can't make the big throws down the field as often, but he can execute all the short and intermediate stuff. And he's a smart player. He doesn't really give the football away as he did in the first game. He seems to be a pretty smart kid. And then you have his ability to run as well. So you can mix in maybe a little bit of more read options and kind of those type of stuff into the Sean McVay offense as well as the fact that you have to respect him when he boots outside the pocket, unlike Jared Goff, where Jared Goff is just looking to pass the whole way and will never run. So it does change Seattle's defense a little bit from that perspective. So we might as well get into that side of the football. But the way that you want to attack Seattle's defense, in my opinion, is pass first. I think we've seen all year that Seattle, they are weaker versus the pass than they are the run. Even when they had their struggles, they were a fairly good run defense. Like early on in the year, I don't know if it just was because teams were deciding to pass on them. So statistically, obviously you're going to give up more pass yards than run yards. But even from a yards per attempt standpoint, like Seattle, they like playing a lot of big personnel. They like having linebackers on the field. They like having defensive linemen on the field. So overall, their game plan is, we will not be ran on. Their system is, we have Jamal Adams in the box. We have he's like an extra linebacker. So essentially what they have is like 8 people in the box on every single play. So obviously that's hard to run on. So that's what's made it difficult for the Rams to run the football on the Seahawks, is they play those bare fronts. They figured it out, like Belichick and Patricia figured it out a couple years ago when the Patriots played the Rams in the Super Bowl that year, right? Patricia did it in Detroit, and then Belichick kind of copied it in New England in the Super Bowl. Like Seattle has figured out to change to that bare front, set the edge, don't allow the outside zone outside, and Jamal Adams and those linebackers, Bobby Wagner, they clean it up. So overall, they've been pretty good versus the run. So I think for the Rams, honestly, their best game plan, in my opinion, is to treat it like the way that they played the Bucs. I did not see the Rams offense at a more efficient just rate overall all season than I saw them play when they played the Bucs. They basically said, F this, we're not running the ball that much. We are putting the ball in the hands of Goff at the time, and we're going to pass it underneath. We're going to get it out quick. And to me, when you play Seattle just, the defense they play, they allow kind of that underneath stuff. They don't really allow the deep ball very much. Your offense isn't really made for the deep ball regardless. So I feel like implementing a lot of that play action on early downs and getting the ball into your tight end's hands or Cooper Kupp's hands or your back's hands or throwing the screens that you love, Sean McVay, I think that's the best way. I think if the Rams are good on early downs, passing the football, first and second down, they'll be very good at moving the ball on Seattle in this game. That's where I feel like they made a mistake last time. I did the commentary for it, and I was just overall surprised that the Rams ran the ball as much as they did in that game, because I felt like every time they dropped back to pass on early downs, they were quite efficient because, Goff, in the way that McVay can scheme up ways for Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods to find the holes in the zone and kind of, just read the defense and then pop themselves in that little zone area. Like Jared Goff was efficient at finding those and hitting those for like 5 to 6 to 7 yards on early downs and setting themselves up for a manageable second and a manageable third down. So personally, I feel like the Rams should come out, and we've seen McVay be game plan oriented, be specific game to game oriented, where we're going to attack a defense this way, we're going to attack a defense that way. And the reason I bring up the Bucs is because that was the biggest example of it. They rarely ran the ball because they understood that the Bucs defense is incredible at stopping the run. And Seattle is the same way in a different way. They don't have the players that the Bucs do, but they play a scheme that almost takes away, forces you to pass. So why not pass the ball? You have Robert Woods, you have Cooper Kupp, you have Tyler Higbee. All these guys are great underneath. Get the ball quick out of Goff's hands or whoever it is at quarterback. Make them comfortable. And then if it's third and short or second and short, run the ball from there. But that's overall what I see from this offense. That's the best way to approach it, in my opinion. Now, on the flip side of things, I look at this game as the Seattle offense versus the Rams defense. And I think that Aaron Donald is going to be really, really tough. Okay, obviously. But how does Seattle learn from the first 2 times they played this creative, different defense that not a lot of people play in the NFL? I really think the Rams play almost, what's the word? Like almost a revolutionary style of defense. Like it's very creative. It's very forward thinking. They don't love linebackers. They love DBs. Almost their safeties play as linebackers. And Seattle's a little different here. I think Seattle, like everybody wants them to be let Russ cook, right? But I think this is actually the game for Seattle where they can get away with being more balanced, in my opinion. Because I think Seattle needs to stay balanced in this game. Because if they just go all out pass, I think that's where you get in trouble when you play the Rams. You need to be balanced. You need to keep Aaron Donald off guard. You need to keep him on his toes. You need to keep that defensive line on their toes. And you need to attack a defense that likes to go small with big people. You need to be able to run the ball. So to me, I think Seattle can play the way they've been playing as of recently on offense. But I just don't see enough from a Seattle like shorter intermediate or just overall passing game. Like their passing game basically at this point is like what it reverted to like last year, the year before that, where it's just like Russell Wilson running around and like trying to find somebody open and then making a play, and like that, you can't have that. I mean, like in the playoffs, you need to have go-to plays, you need to have go-to concepts, and I just never really see that from the Seahawks as of late. They need to find a way to get DK Metcalf more involved, if that's using more motion, if that's putting him, in the slot. I don't know what they have to do. They need to find something because they need to get him involved early in the game. Tyler Lockett needs to win his matchup. But overall, the biggest thing is obviously the line of scrimmage. I think this game will come down to the line of scrimmage. Is Seattle able to get a push in the run game? Is Seattle able to get a pass rush? Are the Rams able to get to a pass rush? Like this game, more than any other game, maybe across the wild card weekend, maybe determined by the offensive line, defensive line play. Because I think the first time around, we saw the Rams dominate the line of scrimmage. And the second game, Seattle made some big stands on the goal line. We're able to force the Rams out on a big set of downs. We saw the Rams not really have their way rushing the football. We had Seattle have a little bit of success actually running the ball. So I feel like the offensive and defensive lines in these games are massively, massively important. And keeping Russell Wilson upright. And Russell Wilson needs to know that he can't take negative plays. Because when you take negative plays, and meaning sacks, you are not going to be able to execute versus this defense on 3rd and longs. So Russ needs to understand what type of game this is. He's been in enough of these moments, but he needs to understand that this is going to be a slow-scoring, close game. I just can't turn the ball over, and I can't take negative plays. If he does both of those things, along with mixing in the big play where it's there, I think Seattle can come out on top. But I do think the Rams defense is going to give them a lot of issues. And I do think Sean McVay is going to learn from the last game they played versus the Seattle defense and have adjustments to it. So what's my pick? I feel like overall through this analysis, I haven't really given you one way or the other. But on my playoff predictions, I did predict the LA Rams to win the game. Now, I still don't know exactly who the quarterback's going to be, so that may sway my pick. But honestly, I don't think the quarterback is a huge deal here. I'm not a huge Jared Goff fan, and overall, Jared Goff really hasn't played that well versus Seattle, especially the last time. And I honestly think Wolford gives them a little bit more in terms of the ability to move. So I think either way, you have your plus, you have your minuses with the quarterback position. I'm leaning towards the Rams. The reason I'm leaning towards the Rams here, as long as it's not like pouring rain or something like that, because that would change it as well, because I'd obviously lean towards Seattle in that instance. But right now, I'm picking the Rams, and I also really like the Rams plus the points because I think their coaching staff, their ability to adjust, their ability to game plan, their ability to see something in one game and adjust to that the next game is the reason that they'll win this game. The second time they played, now the first time the Rams won, the second time they played, again, I did the play-by-play. I watched the entirety of the game. I was in it. And it felt like the Rams were like the better team on the field, but they just didn't execute in some key instances. Like on the goal line, they had the ability to execute. They weren't able to. I feel like that changes in this game. I feel like they go more pass heavy. I'm putting my trust essentially in the Rams coaching staff to make the necessary adjustments from last game to this game. And that, I think, is the difference in this game. That's why I believe in the Rams to pull off the upset here. is because I like the coaching staff of the Rams to make the necessary adjustments key to winning this one. So I'm going to take the Rams. I could see this game going either way. It's going to hinge on probably, it's going to be a one-score game in my opinion. I could see it going either way. Russell Wilson making some plays at the end to win. But I think the Rams defense is for real. I think they're going to give Russell Wilson fits again. And, this is probably the toughest game. This is like the either way game of the week to me. But yeah, I like the Rams coaching staff too much. So I'm going to bet on them to overcome Seattle and get the upset here.